Hey everyone, it's Kong again, and here's another episode of Should You Summon. As always, of course, I'm going to be presenting high-level overviews using these 4 criteria to help you decide whether this banner is worth your hard-earned vouchers and crystals. So let's get right into this Empire's Honor Destiny banner featuring Helena, Florentia, and Betty, running from October 7th to the 20th. As a Destiny banner, the first SSR that you pull is guaranteed to be one of these 3 that you don't already have. After that first SSR pull, or if you already have all 3 of these characters, then the banner is essentially just a normal raid-up banner, meaning you'll have the usual 20% chance to pull an off-banner character. And again, we can get availability out of the way in advance. These 3 characters don't show up on the predicted banner schedule, which is being updated again by Haz, by the way, so if you haven't been checking it, go back and check your bookmarks. This means none of them will be headlining a banner before mid-March at the very earliest. The Destiny banner from last month, the one with Vincent, Zerida, and Claret, does come back in March, so it's certainly possible that this one will drop back into the rotation a month later. Anyway, let's get started with Helena. Helena is a highly mobile cavalry DPS who spreads her unique terrain effects in her wake, can move through enemies, and can disable equipment effects. She can traverse her own crystal terrain without expending mobility, and this actually counts for allied Helenas as well, so if you're doing joint battles or something like that, you can actually rack up quite a lot of movement. Her 3-cost skill is a single target attack that disables the victim's weapon effect, then splashes the area nearby with her terrain in a follow-up AoE burst. Her unique gear splashes her tiles in a ring around her after she acts, and that includes after using Chivalry. And when she's on her terrain, she takes 15% less damage and heals for 30% after getting attacked. She's a member of Empire's Honor, buffed by Bernhardt, Leon, Lance, and Rosenseal, and Legion of Glory, buffed by Lydon, Elwyn, and Grenier. For bonds, she doesn't roadblock anyone else's bonds for the time being. That may change in the future. For her own bonds, she needs Brenda for her defensive bond and Virash for her attack bond. Virash at least is coming back in December, no word on Brenda yet, and I have a feeling Brenda and Virash, or some version of them, are going to become important in the next act of the storyline mode, so if they get alternate versions, like new characters based on them, Helena may come into play for their bonds. We'll have to wait and see. For content, in PvE, she's on faction against Scylla and Valkyrie in the Eternal Temple, and Hugin and Munin and Sleipnir in Ancient Beckoning. But obviously her gear effects are definitely tuned more for PvP than PvE, with the potential to be highly annoying if a bit unpredictable. She has great map control, and her armor makes her effective at removing enemy terrain effects, while also making her surprisingly durable. She also lets you splash a lot of incidental AoE around if you need her to support that kind of team, and this actually makes her work really well with a couple of weapons. Demon Slayer, it gives her a lot of opportunities to strip buffs and add new debuffs, and Bloodsword Hunting also gives her lots of opportunities to proc that extra fixed damage. Next we'll move on to Florentia. Florentia is a healer with an Act Again, which immediately puts her at the top of the usefulness rankings. She collects tokens that she can use after her turn to trigger special effects. 1 token to heal an ally's soldiers by 70% and increase their soldier attack by 10%, 2 tokens to increase an ally's movement, and 5 tokens to let an ally act again. She starts the battle with 5 tokens at 6 star, and she gains 2 more if she ends her turn while under the influence of a faction buff, and she can carry up to a maximum of 10. Her 3-cost skill is a line AoE that debuffs enemies, heals allies, and grants additional tokens. She also has a unique helm that grants 1 additional token whenever an ally dies, plus 1 at the start of the battle. Now that doesn't mean at the start of each combat, by the way, it just means 1 at the start of the map, and that's it. This is another one of those helms that you use if you don't have enough Tenyo's headdress, or you want to free up a Tenyo's for someone else. Personally, I think Tenyo's ends up being a bit better than this one. She's a member of Empire's Honor, buffed by Bernhardt, Leon, Lance, and Rosenseal, Langrisser Reincarnation, buffed by Ares and Hilda, and Strategic Masters, buffed by Altemuller and Lanford. Obviously, this part is pretty important for Florentia, since a big part of her additional abilities from her talent is enabled by having a faction buff. For bonds, she unlocks the attack bonds for Tsubame and Hilda, and for her own bonds, she needs Tsubame for her defensive bond and Licorice for her attack bond. Luckily enough, both of them are coming back on Destiny banners within the next month. Tsubame is actually next week, Licorice a little bit further out. For content, in PvE, she's on faction for Phoenix and Valkyrie in the Eternal Temple, and Sleipnir in Ancient Beckoning. She has a 1-cost skill winning strategy that gives her a token each time an enemy dies. And this actually helps make her one of a handful of completely overpowered units for the recurring Dimensional Expedition Guild Wars event. She can usually keep using Act Again on Rainforce or Shelfaniel every single turn there because you're clearing a wave of 5 enemies each turn. For a similar reason, she's also pretty useful in the new version of the Goblin Gold events. If you haven't already gotten yourself your triple S rank, then she might help you climb up there and get the maximum rewards. In PvP, Empire and Langrisser Reincarnation are both strong meta factions for Apex Arena, giving Florentia reliable access to faction buffs. This alone is enough to make her a top-tier PvP healer. Even if you're not running those factions, if you're just looking for 3 healers to fill out your roster, then her 3C and Act Again potential make her one of your best choices. Finally, moving on to Betty. Betty is one of the game's main AoE checks. She takes reduced damage from AoE attacks. If someone damages a nearby ally, then the attacker takes fixed damage and has a chance of being debuffed. Her unique helmet increases her fixed damage by up to 30%, and her 3-cost skill does damage, plus additional fixed damage to enemies within 2 rings, and it can prevent healing, giving her some utility as an AoE support as well. Her 3C also has a passive component that lets Betty survive an AoE attack that would have killed her up to 3 times per battle, which is fine, since really anyone who's trying to kill Betty is going to do it with single target attacks. She's a member of Empire's Honor, buffed by Bernhardt, Leon, Lance, and Rosenseal, Legion of Glory, buffed by Ledin, Elwyn, and Grenier, and Dark Reincarnation, buffed by Bozel and Licorice. For bonds, Betty's not required to unlock any other character's bonds, and for her own bonds, she only needs Lance. For content, she's technically on faction for Leviar, Scylla, and Valkyrie in the Eternal Temple, but she probably won't be much help in those fights. She's also on faction for Hugin and Munin, Fenrir, and Sleipnir in Ancient Beckoning. To be honest, the only place I've seen her get decent use is in AI Arena. You can slap her in your defense team, and she'll usually be facing off against mindless AoE bots, but even then people have started building teams competent enough not to have to worry about her. On the PvP side, she's not exactly a top-tier unit that can just be dropped into any box, but there are a handful of people who swear by her. If you have a really solid design philosophy behind your box, that is to say, if you know exactly what you're doing, you might be able to fit her in, but you'll still have to be able to deal with the fact that people know how to get around her strengths, so you'll have to try to corner those people during pick and ban. Alright, here's the quick and dirty. We have Helena, who's a mobile and bulky DPS. She moves for free on her terrain, and she can move through enemies. Florentia is a top-tier healer with meta PvP factions and an Act Again in her talent. She's OP for Dimensional Expedition, and she unlocks bonds for Tsubame and Hilda. And we have Betty, who's a pseudo-tank who punishes AoE attacks. Now, time for the notes for noobs. If you're a newer player with a newer account, or someone who just doesn't mind me telling you what to do, essentially, should you summon these units? Helena is a top meta pick for a lot of PvP boxes right now. She's generally useful in PvE because of how far she can travel. If you're running a Glory or Empire box and you need a Cavalry DPS, or if you're a PvP meta hound, go ahead and summon for her. Florentia is one of the best healers in the game. I know there are a lot of best healers in the game, that's because they all do different stuff. She is PvP oriented, but you can definitely make her work in PvE as well. Oh, and she unlocks a bond for Hilda, who's one of the most important meta tanks in the game, so summon for her for sure. Betty is going to be responsible for me getting some thumbs down on this video, but engagement is engagement, right YouTube? In all seriousness, if she's your Destiny guarantee here and you have plenty of resources to spare, then you might as well add her to the collection. But if you're in that situation, I doubt you're a noob, and I doubt you need me to give you the okay, so you do you. Finally, just my usual reminder about upcoming banners. Next week we have a couple of Destiny banners lined up, one featuring Shelinka, Tsubame, and Angelina, and the other featuring the classic OG lineup of Bozil, Liana, and Luna. The week after that, with the beginning of the next Echo of Light cycle, will be the launch of the latest new characters from Langrisser Reincarnation Tensei, Suzette and Christiane. Christiane looks like she's shaping up to be a key meta tank with a faction buff, so if you're starting to run low on resources, definitely consider saving something for that one. Alright, that's it for this episode. I hope you found this video and these summaries helpful enough to warrant a little thumbs up and maybe even a kind comment down below. I know I'm asking a lot today. Definitely do let me know in the comments if you plan on summoning here and what kind of luck you had. Betty is my Destiny guarantee on this one. So, yeah. As always, thank you so much for watching. Best of luck in your own summoning sessions, and I'll catch you in the next Should You Summon. Extra special thanks, of course, to our Langrisser tier channel members for generously supporting this channel directly. Levitt, Derek Gunderson, Kyle Greer-Brown, William Householder, Kate Soon, Jared Portela, Eden Seal, and Shara Ilimirius. Thanks so much for your support, folks.